Hey everyone, welcome back to Programming Horizons. In today's tutorial, we will learn how to create a simple calculator app using Python and Tkinter. This project is beginner friendly and will help you understand the basics of GUI development in Python. In this project, you will learn how to create buttons dynamically using a 2D list, handle user input and events, manage and evaluate expressions safely, and build an interactive user interface using Tkinter. These are the foundational skills that are required to build any GUI app in Python. So let's get started. Right now I am inside PyCharm IDE and here I have created a new project and named it as Simple Calculator. Now in the next step I am going to erase all this code inside main.py window because this is inbuilt code and I don't require it. Let's start by importing Tkinter module. So we will type here import Tkinter as tk, where tk is the short name for Tkinter. For those who don't know it already, Tkinter is Python's built-in library for creating graphical user interfaces or GUIs. Now I am also going to increase the font size by pressing Alt Shift and dot together and keep pressing it until you get the desired font size. So right now the font size is 24 point, which is readable enough. Next we will define a function called click function, and this function will be handling all the button clicks. But for the time being I am not going to pass any code inside this function. I will simply type pass and later on we will define the function code. And now you can see here a yellow line underline appearing, and this is because by default we should add 2 line space before and after the function definition. So now we are going to create the main window of the application. Let's call it as root and then we will type tk.tk and this line will create the main window of the application. In the next step I am going to set a title for this application window. Let's call it as Simple Calculator. We will also set its size using the geometry function, and here we will pass width and height of the calculator. I have already decided to go with width equal to 300 multiplied by, that is x, height equal to 400. Make sure to pass it inside double inverted commas, and after this I want to make sure that the window is not resizable because calculator always has a fixed size. So set the resizable property as false comma false. This means we can neither resize the width nor the height. After this let's configure this main window and set a nice looking background color. Let's say the background color that I want to give to this window is light gray. So I have already memorized its color code, which is hashtag F0 F0 F0. And in order to keep this main window running, we are going to call the main loop function on this root window. After this we will run the code, and now we get to see the calculator window appears with the title set to Simple Calculator. Width is 300 pixels, height is 400 pixels, and the background color is also set, and as you can see we cannot resize this window. Alright, let's move on. In the next step we are going to create an entry widget and place it on the main window. This is where our input and output will be displayed. So first of all we are going to give it a name, which is entry equal to tk.entry, and this line will create an entry box, and now we are going to place it on the root or the main window. Let's give it a border of 5 pixel. Let's set the font equal to Arial and font size equal to 20. We also want to justify the text to right hand side. After this we will set the width equal to 16 pixel, and if you want you can also set a nice looking background color. So here I am passing this light green color, and in the next line we are going to pack this entry box on the main window, and we will also assign it a vertical padding to create a vertical space on the top and at the bottom of this entry box. Let's run the code. And yes, the text box is looking beautiful. It has got a nice border and the color is also fine. Also, if you want to enter any text, the text is readable enough and it is write justified. Now in the next step, I am going to create a button frame where I will place all the calculator buttons. Let's name this button frame as btn frame equal to tk.frame, and this is how we create a frame on the main window. I am going to place it on the main window or the root. In the next line, I will place it on the root or the main window using the pack method, and also inside this pack method I will provide horizontal as well as vertical padding like this. So my button frame is now created. Right. Now it's time to create all the calculator buttons. So here is a comment, calculator buttons, and after this I will be creating a 2D list where each sublist represents a row of buttons on the calculator. Let's name this 2D list as buttons equal to, and since this is a 2D list, so we have to provide two pairs of square brackets like this, where the inner pair will consist of a row of buttons. So my first or the top row of the calculator will have these buttons: C for clear, then left parenthesis, right parenthesis, and after that a division symbol. I will put a comma afterwards and move on to the next row. Now I will place the next set of buttons 7, 8, 9, and after that the multiplication symbol, put a comma, create the third row 4, 5 and 6. After that put the minus symbol, put a comma again, and then create the next row with these labels 1, 2 and 3. After that put the plus symbol, and finally we create our last row where dot represents the decimal symbol, then 0, after that percent symbol, and finally the most important symbol, which is equal to sign. So this is how our 2D list is created. Now to actually display these buttons on the screen, we have to use two nested for loops, one for the rows and other for the columns. So let's create it. Now here my nested for loop begins. So the outer for loop is for rows, so I is the index value. So for I in range length of buttons list. So buttons, as you know, is the name of the 2D list that I just created. Length of buttons is the number of rows that I am having here. Here I have 5 rows and I will be in the range 0 to 4. So the first row will have index value 0 and the last row will have index value 4. Right. After this I will create the inner for loop for j in range length of buttons. So this is the number of columns in a particular row, and that particular row is given by I, and I represents the index of a row. So this is how my nested for loops will work. Inside these loops we are going to create a button using tk.button function. So we will type here btn equal to tk.button, and after this I will place these buttons on the button frame, put a comma. I will assign the text to a particular button using buttons I and j. That means I am accessing a particular row and particular column at a time. After that, font equal to Arial with font size equal to 16. Set the width of the buttons equal to 3 and height equal to 1 pixel. We will now place these buttons in a grid layout using the grid method. So for that we will type here btn.grid and then row equal to I, put a comma, column equal to j, and then supply the padding. Horizontal padding is 10 pixel, vertical padding is also 10 pixel, and finally we will bind each button click to our click function. So here we will type btn.bind, and now see what I am doing here. I will type button -1. This indicates the left click on my mouse or the touchpad, and after this I will bind the button click to the click function that I have defined already, but I am yet to write its code, and that's all. So now if I left click a particular button on the on-screen calculator that I am creating, something will happen, and that will depend upon the functionality that I am going to define in the click function next. But before that, let's run the code and see how nice our calculator is looking on the screen. You can even click it, but there is error as you can see at the back. That's because we have not defined any functionality for these buttons yet, but the calculator is looking absolutely beautiful. So I'll close this. So everyone, we are now ready to define the main functionality of this calculator inside the click function. But before that, I am going to define a flag called reset display, which will be used to reset the display, and initially it will be set to false because we don't need to reset the display initially, but later on we will be resetting the display after we are done performing a calculation. Alright, inside this click function I am going to make this reset display as global so that we can update it whenever needed, especially after performing a calculation and evaluating a result. In the next line, I am going to define another variable called current, which will grab the current text from the entry box, and for that I will have to type here entry.get. That means whatever is there inside the entry widget, entry widget is named as entry in our case, as you can see. So whatever is there inside the entry widget, we will get it and store it inside the current variable. In the same way, I am going to define another variable called button text. I will type here event.widget text. That means whatever is the label of that particular button that is being clicked, get its label or get its text and store it inside this button text. And if you remember, we just created the buttons, and here is the text of the button which we get from these labels or these values which we have stored inside our 2D list buttons. So here you can see event is underlined because we must pass it as an argument to the click function, and that means that this click function is triggered whenever we click a particular button on the on-screen calculator. Now let's begin writing the code for each of the buttons on the calculator. The first button that we have on our calculator is C, which clears everything inside this entry widget. So let's go for it. Here I am going to type if button text, that is the label on the button, is equal to C, which stands for clear, then clear or delete everything inside the entry widget starting from the first character till the end, and after that in the next line I am going to insert a default value at the end of this entry widget, and this default value is 0. We are not going to reset the display, we are just replacing all the values whatever is there inside the entry widget to 0, and we will set reset display to false. But this reset display to false means we are actually indicating a fresh start. Now let's write the code for equal to button. So here I am saying elif button text, that is the label on the button, is equal to the equal to symbol. Then in that case I am going to use the try except block here. For the time being, just understand that I am evaluating the expression here, and whenever equal to button is clicked, we evaluate some expression and display the result. So if our expression contains a percent symbol, then we are going to replace this percent sign, which is indicated by this symbol, with divide by 100, and this is how the percentage calculation will work. Let me scroll down. In the next line, we will evaluate the result using the default eval method, which will evaluate the expression inside the entry widget. Then in order to display the result in the entry widget, we are going to first of all delete everything that is there inside the entry widget, and after this we are going to insert inside this entry widget at the end, that is on the right hand side, we will be storing the result in the form of a string, and that is why I have converted the result to string here. In the next line, we are going to reset display equal to true. This means that if the user clicks another button after the result of the previous calculation is displayed in the entry widget, then reset display will start fresh. That means everything will be cleared inside the entry widget and the new calculation will begin. Let's move on. And since this is a try except block, so we must handle the exceptions here. I am saying except exception. Suppose that there is an error such as divide by 0, then we can catch it using this except block. So here I am saying entry dot delete. If an exception occurs, then delete everything inside this entry widget and replace it with an error message, and here is our error message which says error. And after this, once again we will set reset display equal to true. That means we are going to start a new calculation whenever a new button is clicked. So this is done. Let's move on and handle other buttons. So here I will be typing else. So I am saying here if reset display flag has been set to true, or simply if reset display, let me scroll down once again, then in that case delete everything inside the entry widget starting from the first position to the last, and after this we are going to set the current variable to nothing, and as I told you, current variable will be storing everything that is there inside the entry widget. So when we are resetting the display, then there will be nothing inside the entry widget, and that is why current variable is empty here. Right, we will reset display to false. Now before moving ahead, let us see what we have done so far. Let me run the code first, and here is our calculator. So as you can see, if I click a button, nothing is happening because we have not written the button codes yet. So I will enter something from my keyboard. Let's say 67 multiplied by 3, and if I press equal to sign, then the calculation has been performed. And now if I click on C button, then everything is cleared and we have got the default value equal to 0. And now let's move on and code our numbers and operators. So here I am going to type if current is equal to 0, that means if there is only one value inside the entry widget and that is 0, then it means nothing, and that is why we are going to set current to empty string. This line prevents leading zeros in inputs, like instead of 05 we will only see 5 because this 0 will be ignored if it is the leading 0. So moving ahead, Now we are going to avoid two or more consecutive operators in our expression. For that, I am going to define all the operators in the form of a string, which include plus, minus, multiply, divide and percentage symbol. Now we don't want our expression to contain two consecutive operators or to duplicate operators. Therefore, we must take care of that, and for this purpose I am writing this code. I am saying if the entry box has some input and that is stored in the current variable, and the last character of this input or the expression that is there in the entry widget is one of the operators inside this operator string, and after this if I click on another operator button, then that is the newly clicked button is also one of these operators, then in that case I am going to keep everything inside the current expression except the last character, which is an operator symbol. So keep everything except the last character, and note that the newly clicked buttons label has not yet been added to the current expression. We are just removing the last added operator, but we are not adding the newly clicked buttons text. Okay guys, we are also going to avoid starting an expression with certain operators. So once again I am typing here, if my current expression is empty, that means there is nothing inside the entry widget yet, and if the first button that I am clicking on the calculator is one of these buttons, that means the buttons with the labels either multiply symbol or divide symbol or percentage symbol, then avoid accepting it, and this line prevents starting an expression with an invalid operator like multiply, divide or percentage, because we know that we cannot start any expression with one of these symbols. Finally, we will update the entry box, or you can say entry widget. We are going to delete everything inside the entry widget, because by default everything that we enter in the entry widget gets stored in the current variable. So we are clearing everything inside the entry widget and replace it with the new expression, which is formed by the expression inside the current variable as well as the newly clicked buttons label. So here we add the newly clicked buttons label to the current expression and update the entry box, and now we are ready to run the code. Here if I now click any button, then you can see that values are displayed in the entry widget. Let's say I type 89 minus 4, so I get 85. If I click on clear button, everything is cleared and we get the default value of 0. Similarly, let's suppose I have a longer expression. Let's say 2 multiplied by 8 plus 4 minus 6, and after that I have right parenthesis, and then I divide this by 3, then I get this value. Okay, similarly, let's suppose I start any value with 0, then only that number which I clicked after 0 gets displayed. So in this way we have prevented the leading zeros in an expression. Similarly, if I type two consecutive operators or more, then you can see here only the last entered operator is accepted. Now let's see if the decimal point also works. So let's say I have a value 12.5 divided by 0.05, then I get this value, and if I click dot Then we can start an expression with a decimal point, and if I add some value, then I am getting the correct result. Also, I want to show you that if we divide a value by 0, then we get this error message. You can also calculate the percentage. So here we have it, 20% of 80 is equal to 16.0. So there you have it, a fully functioning simple calculator created using Python and Tkinter. If you found this video helpful, then don't forget to share it with your friends. Also, like and comment on this video and subscribe my channel Programming Horizons for more videos like this.